lights in the trees, a trick of the frost, a ghost on the breeze. But I saw a mirror older than me, staring through time like it wanted to speak. The forest went silent, the world held its breath. Something was watching beyond life and death. We stepped through the green, boots breaking the seal, not chasing a light, but something too real. I came back with salt on my skin, my mind split wide where the storm got in. They call it a test, but I know the deal. History blinks beneath the green veil.
And good evening, everyone, and welcome to Chapter 8 of The Green Veil, which is Shadow Mirror. I'm joined here with John Burrows and Chris DePerno. How are you guys doing this evening?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Bill?
Hanging in there, considering all the stuff going on. John informed us a few days ago, too, about some new activity going on with this Atlas, 3i Atlas object. And it kind of ties into what the show, this
all about.
Right, John? It seems like there might be a connection.
John, why don't you clue us in on the Atlas?
Yeah.
Well, one of the stories that came out was strange structure surrounding 3i Atlas revealed as it begins glowing green, and it's got plasma around it. So, what was the song we just played? The Green Veil.
Mm-hmm. That's what made me think about it. I love that song, by the way. I really like that music.
And then the plasma that's surrounding this object.
Mm-hmm.
It's just strange.
It's like when I look at a meteor streaking across the sky, I'm just saying, when it's burning up, depending on its makeup, composition, iron, copper, it gives off a different color. So I'm wondering if the greenish hue that's coming off this object could just be something of its composition, its makeup, that's having that occur where we're seeing that specific color going on, because it is traveling at a high rate of speed and there's friction. So I'm just wondering if that's related. But you mentioned it also last week about the plasma.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Chris, what are you thinking? You believe it or not, I spoke with our friend Mark D'Antonio. And I asked him, Mark, what do you think about this? And he's an astronomer. He says, Bill, 90%. Wait a minute. You, Mr. Astronomer, are telling me 90%? So you're even considering that there's a 10% chance this might be something else? And he says, Bill, yes. I'm not completely convinced this is a comet. I got to still leave out that possibility. I thought he was going to say 99% or 95. He said 90. So even astronomers are wondering, is this really a comet? Chris, what are you thinking on this?
Well, from what John is telling me, it's taken on unusual characteristics. And if it starts doing that, then you got to leave that door open. We talked about, the comet has a tail. And then we find out, well, maybe it doesn't have a tail. Then we find out that the comet is, they're not fragments that are coming off of it. They use another word as objects and stuff. And so you look at these key words that are being used and you say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. If a comet would break up, it would break up into fragments. And that's a common word that has always been used. I looked at other comments. Oh, yeah, it's broken up into fragments. They're not using that. And now John is reporting that, there's a green glow around it and plasma. Well, plasma, from what I understand, can glow green. So if you do get this green aura around it, is it a containment type of object, not a rock, but a containment type of object? And it has the only way I could say it is like a force field, a plasma field that is protecting it in some way, shape, form to be able to do whatever it's going to do. So this is kind of interesting to see where this is all going to go.
Agreed. And we're going to be airing it right now and momentarily, but it seems like the Green Veil itself, this 22 chapter series, it seems it's so bizarre in my when I think about it, because John wrote this a while back. This wasn't even identified until the end of July with Abby writing the paper. Am I correct on that?
It was June, I think, is when.
Okay, so June, but you had written this prior to that.
Yeah, no, but okay, this is okay. Up until this week, I was intrigued. And what I mean by intrigued was some people believe in coincidence, others don't. I'm one of these guys that sometimes it can be a coincidence, but when things start steamrolling, I'd stop believing in coincidence. I wondered, but this last week, as we signed off last week, we said what's coming next has gotten even crazier.
I agree.
Because not only has that piece came out, but another group of scientists say there's some kind of communications coming from it. And I've heard that somewhere else too. This is before, when this piece dropped yesterday evening, I think it was, I was like, whoa. Because I got some information 2 days before that something like that might be going on. Then this got dropped. The third one is the Earth frequencies are modulating right now. The scientists came out and said that. The frequencies of the Earth are starting to change.
Is that normal or is
No.
that
No. The Earth itself is modulating in some way.
is it coming from the Earth itself or somewhere out there?
No, the Earth is
The
activating.
Earth's frequency itself are starting to modulate, right, John?
Yes, they're modulating. Yes, they're changing. Like they're on a certain wave or a certain thing, and they're starting to become active and modulate.
Could that be an activation of itself making a signal or a receptor of a signal?
I don't know. I'm just saying this last week went from I was intrigued to what is really going on.
Well, John, if I hear you right, if the Earth always gives out some sort of frequency, but if the frequency is starting to modulate or change
As this is
right
coming,
as this is coming, I find that hard to believe as a coincidence because you've got a electromagnetic barrier around the Earth, and that frequency starts to modulate, starts to get stronger, starts to change in certain respects. Something has to activate this.
Yeah.
I just don't see it being a coincidence.
But
that all of a sudden
also,
this happens.
right, because we're going to need to show this real fast. One other thing that's going on, people's mindset is changing too.
Mhm.
Yeah, but not good.
It's going both ways though. There's a lot of negativism, but there's more. People are on the other side are starting to change, and start to be different. There's something going on. Period, across the board right now, that just started this week. So that's all I'm trying to say. And it's not being covered. It's not
I hope
being
you're
covered.
right.
So,
We need more positive hope, love.
yeah, but I'm not saying that's not what's somewhat happening, but why is it happening?
Right.
There's a major change going on right now, period. It's not a subtle, this is a major change.
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, but I don't see, this is just me talking. I don't see anything positive as of yet.
Well, that doesn't mean everything that changes has to be positive, Chris.
And
No,
it's
I understand that, but
It's just changing. That's all I'm getting at. Something is modulating, is what I mean. The Earth,
Right.
people, there's maybe communications, some kind of communications, and it's changed to green, and it's got plasma around it. There's just a lot of weird stuff going on right now. So let's watch this episode.
Yes, before we're short of time, we're going to run that now. So everyone, this is chapter 8. Get ready for it. I can't wait to see it after how last week ended. So this is the Shadow Mirror.
The forest didn't just swallow him, it mirrored him. In Chapter 7, the timeline ruptured. Jack Barrett vanished before the eyes of his fellow airmen, drawn into a spatio-temporal distortion no protocol could explain. Sergeant B, forced back into the anomaly under covert orders, retrieved Jack, but not without cost. 5 men witnessed the impossible. One of them, Lieutenant Colonel Ross Denning, was later identified as a preconditioned asset. Programmed with linguistic triggers, his memory fragmented for strategic use. The others, Haynes, Moreno, Vickers, and Avery, were debriefed, sanitized, and reassigned. Their testimonies now sit in classified vaults, surrounded by redacted transcripts and pseudo-scientific footnotes. A second time dilation bubble was constructed, rushed, unstable, but functional. What returned from it was Jack Barrett, or a version of him. What remained behind, somewhere beneath the Capel Green node, is a question the Pentagon still won't answer. Now, in Chapter 8, the hearings resume. Congress demands specifics. What equipment was used? How was the Soviet satellite retrieved and reintegrated into the timeline? Why were Barrett and Sergeant B's memories wiped? And how does this shape the defense posture of the United States in 2025? What they don't yet know is that the signal never left. It adapted. The men changed. Reality flexed. And a mirror was left behind, waiting, watching, reflecting something no longer entirely human.
Under a forest crowned in ash, we vanish from the lines of time. A pulse was born, a name erased, our echoes folded into rhyme. They said we walk through light and shadow, but never told us what we'd find. Our voices buried in the marrow, while others rewrote humankind. Oh, never struck the earth below. It bent with Jack through quantum scars, a silent orbit we don't show. Memory burned and truth was sealed, our minds reset, our names concealed, but through the veil we still recall the breach that dared to swallow all. So summon us from light unspoken, from shadows cast by secret will. Though time and oath remain unbroken, we walk the forest still. Oh,
Senate Intelligence Committee, hearing room, present day. Dr. Voss, please clarify one more time. What equipment was used to retrieve Technical Sergeant Barrett from the phenomenon? Every eye trained on the screen showing thermal overlays and radar inversion from that night in 1980. The chamber had grown quiet. Too quiet. Voss leaned forward. His voice was precise. We used a modified phase-tuned harmonic array, originally developed under Project MirrorLink, paired with a classified psionic amplifier constructed under the COBRAMIST derivatives. The key was frequency matching. Jack had become entangled with a field operating outside of linear time. Dr. Voss, explain how did you retrieve Sergeant Barrett from the time dilation bubble? Voss clasped his hands. We never expected it to be repeatable, but we monitored harmonic decay patterns and spatio-temporal bleed just outside Capel Green. Using an array of synchronized field generators, variants of directed LF emitters, we were able to reconstruct a phase pocket and draw him back in through resonance matching, like plucking the right frequency from a field of static. I required the most precise operation yet attempted. With Pike's oversight, a second-time dilation bubble was artificially initiated using harmonic pulse arrays positioned around Capel Green. Sergeant B, still unstable from the previous encounter, volunteered to go. The bubble formed. A static storm spread across the forest. Sergeant B stepped into the mist. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then, a pulse. Both men returned. Jack collapsed first, followed by Sergeant B moments later. Each had burns on their hands, subtle distortions to their biosignatures, and identical black rings on their inner forearms where no injuries had previously existed. They were medically stabilized. Then, wiped. A chemical memory scrub was deployed, hypnotic reinforcement layered atop blank space conditioning. When they awoke, they remembered only that a storm had interrupted their patrol. Senator Walden narrowed his eyes. And the Russian satellite? It wasn't destroyed, Voss admitted. That was a cover story. It was reabsorbed, temporally displaced, then pulled back into our frame after the convergence. It didn't crash. It was folded back into the loop, reinserted into a non-linear sequence using the same temporal geometry that pulled Jack out. We believe it carried data, perhaps even an early response from the phenomenon. Christopher Hunter Green, seated beside Voss, added, "We brought it in the loop." Same as Barrett, and we learned more than we intended. Hunter Green explained further. Inside a reinforced containment chamber, the Russian satellite was suspended in a magnetic sling. Its hull showed signs of exposure not to heat, but to compression. Time compression. When Pike and I reviewed the scan, we discovered we recovered a payload. But not just that. We recovered language. That it transmitted before it folded. Transmitted what was the response? Hunter Green responded. A waveform stretched across the screen, almost organic. It transmitted Jack. Murmurs erupted. And what became of the Soviet frog team sent to retrieve it? Hunter Green answered. The team was taken into custody under Section 9 protocols. All data collected from their recovery effort was absorbed into ECHOFRAME, and their memories chemically erased. Their involvement was never disclosed publicly. Just like Jack and Sergeant B, Walden said. Their memories were wiped too. Correct, said Voss. We couldn't risk them recalling what the signal had embedded. What happened to the 5-man team? Hunter Green replied. The 5-man Air Force team dispatched by the wing commander had returned to base shaken, speechless. Each of them was pulled from standard duty and routed into a temporary debrief cell inside the subterranean annex beneath Building 472. The men had witnessed the impossible. Jack Barrett vanishing into a vortex of flickering plasma. Sergeant B pulled toward the anomaly before the field collapsed, and a voice broadcast directly into their minds, asking them one question. Do you remember who you were before? One by one they were interviewed, each account matched in tone but diverged in detail, time distortion, light inversion, Jack vanishing in a burst of resonance. Sergeant Moreno trembled. He was there, then not, like he melted into the pulse. Vickers simply whispered, "It spoke to him. Not to us. To him." But Denning was different. Calm, measured. Hunter Green nodded. "He's already embedded." "You mean controlled?" Hunter Green fired back. Denning, their CO, had been programmed in advance. Trigger words embedded during earlier Langley consultations with the CIA. He didn't remember issuing the call to advance on the anomaly, but the command had come from him. And now I took full control of his career, and he answers only to me and the CIA director. The official story relayed to the base was surgical in its simplicity, a night training operation simulating Cold War radio failure protocols. Radar malfunctions were blamed on outdated calibration. Lights were attributed to an atmospheric inversion layer. All personnel on duty were rotated, reclassified, or moved. The event was buried before sunrise. To the security teams at the East Gate and the WSA, the narrative was clear: a test of emergency readiness, an exercise involving electromagnetic interference simulations. "Dr. Voss," came the voice of Senator Hayashi, "how has this incident shaped our current defense technology?" Voss didn't blink. "You use it every day. The radar blur correction in modern stealth fighters, the adaptive optics in your hypersonic missiles, even the predictive targeting algorithms in drone swarms, all seeded from waveform data recorded that night." From Jack. Silence fell. "So you admit the operation was still active beyond 1980? Hunter Green gave a thin smile. "It never stopped." "And how many more like Jack are out there?" Hunter Green leaned forward. "That depends," he said, "on how many remember." The shadow left behind that night was not just born of fear or flight. It was a mirror, dark and deep, that wakes in those who dared to sleep. The light may have vanished from the treetops, but the imprint remained, etched into more than just soil. It was now in systems, in circuitry, in minds. The event at Rendlesham had crossed a threshold not meant to be returned from. Congress had heard the fragments. The scientists had buried the rest, but in the silence that followed, one truth echoed louder than any transmission. They weren't just witnesses, they were participants in something still unfolding, and what came next would no longer be confined to the forest.
Through the silence of time, I walked alone, but the stars knew my name in undertone. From Rendlesham woods to Saturn skies, I carried the echo, I lived the why. It wasn't the end, it was unfolding. Not contact made, but truth beholding. Beyond the war, beyond the flame, we were just shadows, we became. We became the song inside the lattice, carved in light, born from the static. We became the dream that...
All right, we've got, gentlemen, literally like 3 minutes to wrap this up. A few comments. And it's funny because you mentioned, John, when we started this, you mentioned about a possible signal come from Atlas. Well, in this episode, it mentions directly about a signal embedded within. So, guys, Chris, your take on this? This episode quickly?
Very quickly, I kind of focused a little bit on the Russian satellite.
Mm-hmm.
How I found it was interesting that it fell but never hit Earth, and so it was absorbed by this port. I'm going to call it a portal, and then yet does the satellite get retrieved from the portal? Is this a way? Was this an experiment to get this satellite taken intact and then retrieve it from this bubble, this portal. It's the
But
same
did
way
the-
they did with Jack Barrett.
I may not, maybe I got it wrong, but didn't the satellite have embedded in its equipment, in its electronics, a signal in it?
It did have a signal, right? You're correct, but a lot of things had signal. Jack Barrett had a signal that was harmonizing with it. There was, Sergeant B was transformed. The other interesting thing I took from this was Denning, that he was I'm going to call it brainwashed, using trigger words prior to this. So he must have been part of this experiment before, because one, they got him on this, and two, they put into him trigger words that would have been used for this, and then they take him out of it because now these trigger words they consider maybe cautionary or dangerous.
And also, there were the individuals that were directly involved at Rendlesham, but also it makes mention of others that the same procedures may have happened to them, where their memories.
You can get this from the whole series, which is great. Is that this isn't the first time they did this, because they know how to create the bubble. They had the theory of how to create this bubble, and with Deming being programmed already, it makes me think that this was an ongoing experiment, not something that they just started.
Right. John, any final words on this?
Just that's not correct. If you go back and look at it, that was the first time they ever created the bubble to go in and get Barrett. They've been studying it, and the first bubble was the actual phenomenon itself. The second bubble, they had to provoke it to recreate the bubble to go in.
Then why would they have to condition Denning?
Denning and those guys were conditioned from remember the movie The Manchurian Candidate and MK Ultra?
Yeah.
These guys were conditioned, no, not necessarily for that particular event, but to be controlled if some kind of event took place.
Gotcha.
So these guys there's certain groups that are conditioned to be able to go in and handle certain situations based on conditioning that they were prepared.
All right, if this was the first time, John, it just seemed that they were awful successful on the first time around. I mean, it seemed like they knew exactly how to do it from what
they were able to create it the second time based on the encounter that Sergeant B and Sergeant Barrett had going into it. They had it all recorded, and that's how they recreated it.
The harmonics, yes.
Yeah, the harmonics, the frequencies that it was producing. Because actually, they say that Barrett was emitting a frequency or a transmission, and they were picking that up.
Right. They were able to hone in on him and get him out of there when they set up that device again the second time, and with the help of Deming with B, get him out. But B also went back out there to go through the whole thing all over again. He said, "I'll go." So that was pretty interesting in itself. But you know what? What a cliffhanger! My gosh! Now I can't wait to see.
One question I have with it, and I think maybe this is down the road. Why did they ask Jack Barrett remember who you were before? So they must have known that he met himself somewhere.
How do we know we're dealing with the same Jack Barrett from the time that he?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Because in this chapter, they ask him, "Do you remember who you were before?"
Right.
Good point.
Yes.
So the question is like Bill is saying, is it the same Jack Barrett? Is it a different Jack Barrett? Or are they trying to pick Jack Barrett's brain that they know he had a conversation with
guess what?
Before or after?
Stay tuned for next week.
I know. It ended with such a tease. I was like, "Oh, I want more." For real, that it looks like it's just. I say this every week. It's just getting more intense and awesome every week. I have to say this from my own personal opinion. I am enjoying this immensely. That's just me. Everybody, I hope you are as well. We'll see you next week for another episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't seen it, or if somebody that you know, because you may be hearing this on audio, let them know about the Green Veil. They can go back and catch up. We're on chapter 8 now, and it's a great series. And we're going to 22. Christmas Eve might be one heck of a Christmas Eve, to say the least, with everything else that's going on. So for John Burroughs, Chris DePerno, and myself, have a great night, and we'll see you all next